Good evening on this Wednesday, May 26, 2021, and it's time for the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, and we're going to get right into it. A lot of things to talk about once again. Well, did you see the eclipse? I got up at 3:10 in the morning, and we had a deck of altocumulus clouds that came into the Anchorage area. Couldn't see it. It was most visible south of the Brooks Range, and maybe somebody there in the southwest part of the state saw it. If you did, let us know. But otherwise, the fire we had the other day, Tuesday morning, Pilot Point, that's the way the sky camera looked there at the FAA site at the airport. And now this morning, well, at least a lot better conditions. The fire is kind of snuffed out, but there's still some residual smoky haze in the area, but that's good news. And looking at the river breakup situation, well, it's the northern rivers now along the north slope that are breaking up. Nothing too major to report, though we did hear that from Colville River at Colville. The channel ice is starting to lift and move downstream at Ocean Point. Otherwise, if you see something up there on the northern rivers, let us know. We always appreciate reports, especially any pictures or video if you're flying over a remote stretch. And if you see something more serious, a more significant flooding, a serious ice jam, you can contact us at nws.ar.aprfc@noaa.gov or call 1-800-847-1739 to speak with someone at the River Forecast Center. Well, we're not done with winter yet either. We have a winter weather advisory that has been issued for the eastern Alaska Range from noon Thursday through noon Saturday. And there is a potential for 3 to 6 inches of snow to fall along the Richardson Highway, with locally over 12 inches in the high elevations. And there could be a period of lower visibility and some gusty north winds of 20 to 30 miles an hour on Friday, especially south of Black Rapids. So keep that in mind, because we have a kind of a backdoor cold front that's going to be sliding down the eastern half of the state, bringing in cooler temperatures. And this trend's going to continue, unfortunately, for the holiday weekend across a good chunk of the state. Well, looking at satellite imagery, we had nice clear skies, another day of sunshine, temperatures in the 70s in some of the Yukon River Valley, upper Kuskokwim. And we are going to see temperatures cool down here coming up, not as warm as what they've been here the first half of this week. Also, we're going to start to see a marine layer of clouds move inland across the southeast later tonight and into the day tomorrow. As a cold front drops south along the Arctic coast and toward the Brooks Range, that's going to bring in colder air, especially across the eastern half of the state. As the remnants of a occluded front lifts northward and weakens into the west side of the state, there'll be another low that's sitting back out there south of the western and central Aleutians. Another low is going to pivot up from the northern Pacific here as we step through the weather maps coming up here by Friday. So on the weather map today, still a lot of sunshine across much of the southwest, western half of the state, with the exception of the coast. We've seen some clouds move in there. Weak low pressure lags from essentially the southwest across east central areas of the state into northwest Canada. A few widely scattered showers, isolated rumbles of thunder. And then as we go into tonight, we'll continue to see those weak troughs of low pressure lag there across the east central part of the state. But that cold front dropping in from the north, that's going to bring in some colder air, especially aloft, increase the instability as we go into Thursday afternoon. Meanwhile, a stronger area of low pressure sits just south of the western half of the Aleutians. And the old occluded front just weakens to a trough over the Alaska Peninsula with a few light showers. And then on Thursday, we do expect there could be some isolated thunder, could even be a little small hail or sleet mixed in with some of those showers. And then in the colder air, snow will be developing and spreading southward. And as I said, that winter weather advisory is in effect for the eastern Alaska range noon Thursday until noon Saturday. And then you'll see on Friday's weather map, there's that area of low pressure spinning up, lifting northward from out of the North Pacific there south of the Alaska Peninsula. And that's going to send a surge of moisture across much of the southern half of the state, including the Southwest Peninsula, as well as south central areas and the southeast. So this means a cooler and wetter Memorial Day weekend. Low temperatures Thursday morning will be in the lower 40s across the inner waterways, and generally in the 40s across much of the south central areas. For Thursday afternoon, we're still looking at highs to get up around 73 there at McGrath, and still otherwise 50s along the coast. And as we go into Friday morning, lows will generally be in the 40s, the inner waterways, and as we go back through south central areas. And Friday afternoon with the cloud cover, areas of showers, rain pushing in from the south. We are going to look at temperatures lower 50s, generally the inner waterways and along the south central coast toward the Kenai. But still some readings in the 60s there across the lower Kuskokwim and Yukon deltas. Now let's look at the lows here. Thursday morning, Arctic coast, mid-20s, near or a bit above freezing as you get south of the Fort Yukon and south of the Yukon River. Temperatures on Thursday afternoon near the freezing mark. The Arctic coast still 60s to a few 70s showing up as you head down through the middle lower Yukon Valley. And then Friday morning could start to see some temperatures approaching freezing in the Fairbanks area. Definitely though, Fairbanks area, if you got an early garden going, you could see temperatures at or below freezing Saturday morning. And temperatures Friday afternoon will have cooled down there across the Yukon Valley back into the 50s and 40s. And looking for Thursday morning, across the Southwest Peninsula, we are looking for lows that are generally in the lower 40s, a few areas holding up there along the Yukon River. And then high temperatures still could squeak around or a bit above 70 as we get up toward, McGrath still could squeak out readings that warm, as well as down along the Kuskokwim River. And Friday morning lows will generally be back in the 30s along the west coast, lower 40s extending down the Southwest Peninsula, Kodiak Island, and high temperatures still, though, may manage to reach the 60s there, Dillingham. And as we go into the extended outlook, looking ahead here into early June, keep in mind this upcoming holiday weekend is looking wetter and cooler, and we'll continue to see cooler temperatures across the east half of the state and the southeast panhandle, with precipitation averaging a bit above normal across much of the south central, eastern, and southeast Alaska. So that does it for your statewide weather.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Here's your flying weather for planning purposes Thursday into Friday before the long holiday weekend. And we'll continue to see IFR conditions along the Arctic coast and north slopes as a cold front drops southward across the eastern Arctic coast tonight into early Thursday morning. Areas of IFR will linger across portions of the northern inner waterways and the northern Gulf of Alaska, and then back out along the Alaska Peninsula, especially along the Pacific side and much of the Bering. And the ridge of high pressure that's brought gorgeous weather to much of the southwestern portion of the state's breaking down, so we will expect maybe skies not be quite as clear. Thursday afternoon, we could see a few scattered showers, isolated thunder over east central areas of the state down toward the Copper River Basin. That'll be the case again on Friday as colder air aloft arrives, and that will make for a bit of surface instability here going through the end of the week. A lot of IFR conditions out over the Bering and again along the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians. Friday morning, areas of IFR across the North Slope and Arctic coast. Expanding there across the Gulf of Alaska, the northern areas there, including the south central coast and much of the southeast. Areas of IFR continue throughout the Bering and down along the Alaska Peninsula into the Aleutian chain. And that'll be the case Friday afternoon. We'll be watching later on this week as we head through the weekend another area of low pressure pivoting up out of the North Pacific that's going to bring more extensive clouds and precipitation to the south central areas here, unfortunately, for the Memorial Day weekend. Past conditions Thursday, Anatovik will be IFR, the north entrance northward, MVFR at the south entrance with improving conditions the farther south you go. Same thing at Adigan, IFR north entrance and up along the north slope, but MVFR at the south entrance. And farther south, Lake Clark and Merrill will enjoy at least another day of VFR conditions on Thursday. That'll be the case for rainy, windy, and Isabel Pass, at least to start the morning at Isabel, becoming MVFR in the afternoon. Same at Mentasta, VFR conditions Thursday morning becoming MVFR as moisture begins to lift northward up there across the south central coast. And Tonita will see generally MVFR conditions on Thursday. Portage will have IFR conditions, the east entrance out over Prince William Sound. The west entrance should see VFR to MVFR conditions, so look for conditions to deteriorate there at Portage. Chilkoot and White will start off IFR, may briefly come up to MVFR Thursday afternoon, but overall Thursday night and the Friday we're going to see IFR conditions sock in much of the southeast. Freezing levels are around or above 6,000 feet across the southwest half of the state in response to that warmer ridge of high pressure that's beginning to break down, with some 8,000 plus foot freezing levels there over the southwest peninsula. Otherwise, note in the north there, freezing levels will be below 2,000 feet along the Brooks Range and Arctic coast. And then icing potential, pockets of 6,000 to 12,000 feet there in the southeast, 5,000 to 10,000 feet across east central and southeast interior areas, and then 2,000 to 8,000 feet along the Arctic coast, and 5,000 to 12,000 feet throughout the western and central Aleutians. Jet stream level winds are out of the northeast there along the Arctic coast and northwest, upwards to 90 knots. That's bring down that colder air as you go down through the atmosphere. Weak high pressure over St. Lawrence Island, and then the stronger low is located there over the western central Aleutians, with southerly flow coming up from there, dropping down to 9,000 feet. We see northeasterly winds across the northwest around 35 to 40 knots. As we go across south central, southeast areas, there are areas of northwest winds, 30 to 40 knots, and then more importantly, the low pressure circulation there in the Aleutians, bringing up ahead of it 30 to 45 knot south winds. On the backside, winds turn around to the north at upwards to 50 knots. And then as we go down to 3,000 feet, weak low pressure circulation there near and south of the Alaska Range. Not much in the way of winds there across much of the interior, but back out toward the Aleutians, we do see winds ahead of that low pressure system out of the south-southwest, upwards of 40 to 45 knots, and on the backside, south of the Aleutians, out of the north-northeast at 50 knots. Quick check of turbulence. We can see some turbulence surface to 4,000 feet, mainly across the western and central Aleutians. So be careful there if you are planning a flight, heading out. Keep up to date with the latest forecast and weather conditions.
When you think of a national park, you probably envision wide open natural spaces undisturbed by human activity. There are indeed such places, but even in some of the most remote areas of a place like Kenai Fjords National Park in Alaska, the mark of man is present. Marine debris is a menace to the farthest reaches of our globe, and even designated national park lands are not immune. In the summer of 2009, the Resurrection Bay Conservation Alliance, a grassroots conservation organization based in Seward, Alaska, decided to do something about the marine debris fouling the beaches of Kenai Fjords National Park. Marine debris coordinator Tim Johnson had first-hand experience with the issue.
The summer before, my wife and I, Michelle, had done a paddle from Seward, sea kayak paddle from Seward to Homer. Really, our eyes were open to some areas that we didn't realize there was so much accumulation. It was very deceiving up front. You couldn't really get a feel for the extent and impact of it. You've got this nice high tide line that's quite pristine, and you really don't get a picture for the impact, the amount of debris in that area until you get behind those storm berms. You get back into the lagoons and the vegetation around those lagoons. And then you see the absolute extent back into that veg and how intertwined and enmeshed these decades of trash deposition. So we were just appalled by that and said we got to get something together on a larger scale.
The Resurrection Bay Conservation Alliance is a local nonprofit community organization, and they have been instrumental in helping the Park Service obtain funding to get larger boats to help move the debris, and they get volunteer labor and organize the work trips. And so it's really a partnership between the Park Service and the community to help get out and really get a project done that in and of itself any one group couldn't do on their own.
Most of that trash was baggable. However, there were large items, huge, piles of hauser line, for example, that we just had to hoist up onto the boat.
The volunteers didn't just bag, haul, and hoist the garbage, but also carefully recorded what types of debris were collected.
In many ways, the debris itself is a resource. Archaeologists use middens, the trash heaps, as a way of analyzing past cultures. And in one sense, marine debris is a form of a midden. It's a trash heap that left for the future would be something that people could use to analyze our culture. It may not say the best things about our culture or everything that we want, but we need to be able to document what we've done so that we can preserve that legacy, make sure that we as a society don't forget what we've been doing.
We had two larger categories of marine debris that we picked up. Commercial fishing means like, say, gill nets, large hauser lines, anything that would be associated with more of a commercial fishing scale. And then the second category was more recreational fishing and household, which would be general plastics, things like that. So we had about a 75% of the commercial fishing marine debris element, and about 25% of the recreational and household further out the bay. And we had the exact opposite the closer we got to Seward. Within the bay, it was about 25% commercial fishing versus 75% recreational fishing and household.
The trash is not just unsightly for park visitors, but also poses threats to wildlife and marine habitat.
Really one of the larger issues now that you go to this plastic that can really get into the food web and affect the food web differently than something like glass.
These substances, for instance, all these polystyrene blocks that are breaking down into all these little crumbly bits are further breaking down on a microscopic level, and how much of an impact that has, in this ecosystem is yet to be determined, but I think it's got pretty high potential.
Well known that sea turtles will eat plastic bags floating in the water. They look like jellyfish to a sea turtle, and Obviously, a plastic bag doesn't go well in the digestive system of a turtle. Albatross will see small pieces of plastic floating on the surface and think they're small fish and other food sources and eat that in their stomachs, especially in some of the northwestern Hawaiian Islands. They'll find dead albatross that have starved to death with a full stomach, and it's full of pieces of plastic.
We're affecting our local areas this way, but we need to be thinking about it from more of a state and global, international scale. And most importantly, to try and focus on prevention of it coming in the first place. Because we're just going to see this continuing, to build up on our beaches unless we're able to get a little bit more of an approach on prevention on the front end.
Marine debris is really a global problem, in all the oceans, and there are many different sources. Global shipping is one. Fishing debris from commercial fishing, recreational boating activity on land, stuff blowing off land, washing down streams, people just throwing stuff on the shore.
Though the problem can seem overwhelming, Johnson remains upbeat about making a positive difference.
No, you gotta start locally. You gotta take control of what you can do, and make something with that, and try and move on from there.
Overall, more than 9 tons of debris was removed from the beaches of Kenai Fjords National Park and transported back to Seward to be deposited in a landfill.
People gave a lot to the project in order to make it happen. That was awesome. One of the most amazing experiences I've ever had. Being able to put that large of a group of volunteers together, dedicated volunteers to put that much effort and give that much time and pull all the different agencies together to see it all happen was incredible. It was incredible. Yeah, very fulfilling experience.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
We'll begin today's marine weather with taking a look at the sea ice edge. And we continue to see the ice melting across the North Bering Sea on up through the Chukchi Sea, with Polinias opening up and some fairly open water now in Norton Sound there, just to the southeast of Nome. A little push of colder air is going to drop down along the eastern Arctic coast, so that may slow some of the melting and break up that way for a little bit. But otherwise, things continue to progress as we'd expect this far along now in the spring season. The marine forecast, though, for southeast areas, inner waterways, we'll see winds from the northwest there on the south end, up around 15 to 20 knots. Inner waterways, waves a few feet around Ketchikan. And then the inner waterways to the north, 15 to 20 knots with waves of 3 to 4 feet. Generally west winds off of Sitka, 10 to 15 knots, swells around 6 feet, and south to southeast winds there near and west of Yakutat. As far as what we are looking for then in terms of going into Friday, winds are going to be picking up out of the south and southeast. We could see some gusts upwards of 35 to 45 knots up through the Lynn Channel there, Juneau to Skagway, as winds pick up and swells around 6 feet. Along the Gulf of Alaska coast, anywhere from 20 to near 30 knot winds increasing, and waves will build upwards to 6 to near 10 feet. As we have a marine layer that will be spreading back inland across the inner waterways there for Friday, with wetter weather arriving, especially over the long holiday weekend. Across the southeast or south central areas, winds will be southeasterly. Easterly flow 10 knots, 2 feet there around Prince William Sound off the Kenai. We're looking at winds from the southeast at about 10 to as high as 20 knots, and up through the mouth of Cook Inlet to west of Homer, we could see south winds of 25 to 30 knots and swells of 7 to 9 feet. And on Friday, look for the flow trying to turn a little bit more, develop an easterly component. Off the Kenai there, we are looking at 15 to 20 knot winds, swells around 4 feet. and southeast to south winds up Cook Inlet to 20 knots, and swells generally around 5 to 6 feet. Across the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island winds will be south 10 to 15 knots on the Gulf and the North Pacific side, and northeasterly 10 knots on the Bering side. Waves rather marginal for this time of year. And then looking at the flow as another area of low pressure lifts out of the North Pacific, we'll see winds out of the east to northeast 20 to 30 knots on the Pacific side, 15 to 20 knots on the Bering side, and waves highest there up near 7 feet, some of the swells off Sand Point. For the Aleutian chain, there's an area of low pressure that's further south there of the western half of the Aleutians. And so ahead of it, southeast winds 25 to 30 knots, swells generally between 8 and 10 feet most areas, but a bit stronger there south and west of Adak on over to Kiska. And by Friday, that newer area of low pressure lifting out of the North Pacific will begin to turn winds around to the northeast and north, anywhere from around 15 to generally 20 knots. Swells on the Pacific side of 10 to 13 feet, and anywhere from 5 to near 10 feet there on the Bering side. Looking at the ice, is largely opened up there across much of the Bering, except for the farther north as you get up toward Norton Sound, and especially north of St. Lawrence. Otherwise, winds will generally be out of the north-northeast 10 to 15 knots, swells 3 to 6 feet. With that low approaching the tip south of the Alaska Peninsula, we're going to see northeasterly winds picking up around 25 knots, and waves generally in the 5 to 7 foot range on Friday. Along the Arctic coast, northeasterly winds 15 knots, bringing in some colder air, and those winds a bit stronger off the northwest coast down toward Kotzebue Sound at 20 to 25 knots. And then on Friday, winds turn more northerly along the Arctic coast with a little reinforcing shot of some colder air, and then northeasterly, especially off of Cape Lisburne and Point Hope to 25 knots. And we do expect the ice melting to slow a bit up there across the Arctic coast. Thursday, we'll see a cold front dropping south across the interior. The Aleutian low will begin to weaken as a stronger low brings a surge of moisture up across the Alaska Peninsula into south central areas as we head into Friday. And we'll take another look at that. Be sure to join us in what is trending to be a cooler and wetter Memorial Day weekend for areas much of the southern portion of the state. Thanks for watching.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.